Welcome to The Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Welcome. My name is Dr. Denise Nicholson, and I am the creator of the Bold Book of the Day. And this podcast is for anyone looking for inspiration. Today, I have a lovely guest who is so patient and so kind. I cannot wait to introduce, let's hear it for Miss Laurel Anne Hill. Welcome.
I am so glad to be here, Denise. I am absolutely delighted you invited me.
I'm so happy that you took my invitation because your book, well, you have two books, and they are intriguing and an inspiration. Detailed in the 19th Century is the one in Plague of Flies, and I can't wait for the readers to hear about both of them. So, in Plague of Flies, you depicted as a richly or detailed 19th century California. What drew you to this time period?
Well, I was actually investigating my family history, and my father was half Mexican, and I found out that his family had not come right from Spain to California. They'd spent several generations in Mexico. So I was trying to find out information, and I thought that maybe he had been in California and was part of the Rancho community. So I was looking there, and that was the wrong place. So that's how I got started, and characters started talking in my head that I needed to write this story. So I started to write the story.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I can't wait for you to tell us a little bit about your history. What's your story?
My story, which one?
Ah! Pick one.
Okay. I mean, I have had this crazy, incredible, lucky life. And I started out with three generations living in a 2-bedroom, 1-toilet flat in San Francisco, and my father was an alcoholic. And I wanted to go to college, and there would have been no path except about the age of 4 years old, I decided I wanted to write. And my older sister would write down my stories, and then I decorate them, the pieces of paper, with pictures from comic books and magazines. And she did that. I didn't learn how to read until I was in the 2nd grade. And then I could start writing my own things down. Mm-hmm. Well, fast forward, I had my first story published, and it was horrible when I was 11 years old in the children's section of a major San Francisco newspaper. And I was just ecstatic. I go back now and I read that every once in a while just to kind of, get all the enthusiasms out of me being a good writer, because boy, I started out awful.
Remind yourself that the greatness started early on.
And then when I was a teenager, I said I wanted to go to college. So I started entering essay contests available to students in high school in San Francisco. And I started winning, and I kept on winning. And I won enough money to pay for 4 years of tuition and books.
Wow.
And so just as San Francisco State, no big university, no big deal, but that was what I needed. And I decided after that, if I never made another dime writing, I will have accomplished that with it. And when I really needed it.
That's encouraging, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't start writing as an adult, except for nonfiction, because I ended up in the field of science. I had to write manuals. I had to write things that went to the government that talked about how we complied with environmental health and safety plans. And, I even became an underground storage tank operator for
Oh wow.
our site. I kind of did. I went from laboratories to research to this to that, and ended up my last 21 years at a biotech, pharmaceutical combination research and development site, 53 acres in Richmond, California,
Oh,
and
you
in
have
the
an
mental
interesting
health
life.
and safety. So I didn't start writing fiction again until I was 51 years old. And that's because really I had this funny malady. And it wasn't funny, it was horrible, it was painful. But I laugh about it now because you know what norovirus is?
No.
Oh, it's a horrible virus, and you just
Oh, the
just
norovirus. Yes,
yeah,
yes,
you
yes, yes,
just
yes. Oh,
upchuck
girl,
like
I've
crazy,
had
and
it.
it's
Yes, right.
violent.
Mm-hmm.
And well, norovirus hadn't yet been discovered when
Uh-huh.
I had this. And so the doctors didn't know what was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I had such a bad reaction that physically I damaged some nerves in
Mm-hmm.
my back. And this set off the muscles in my back cramping 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 6 weeks. And if you've ever had a cramp in the muscles in your back, that is painful. And to have them nonstop for 6 weeks, they had me, I was at home. There was nothing the hospital could do for me. So I
Mm-hmm.
stayed at home, and I had to take medication in order to stop screaming.
Yeah.
And so I did, and it made me hallucinate. And one of the things I hallucinated was the Grim Reaper.
Oh my goodness.
And he was there in my bedroom, only
Oh my
he
God.
was not holding a scythe. He was holding a pen.
Okay. 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 Whew.
And that
Relief. Yes.
and I took heed of what he had to say.
What did he say?
Well, it was essentially, you wanted to write too late now.
Ah, that's right. That's right. You
So
have a
I
vivid imagination.
so I promised that if I got out of this, that I would write. And this is actually one of the answers to one of your three questions was, well, making a promise.
Yeah, before we get to the promise, in the Plague of Flies, it's such a historical setting. I want you to tell me a little bit about the character, one of the character, Catalina. Tell us a little bit about Catalina and the challenges she faced.
Well, she is 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to marry Angelo. And but the problem is her family, although they have a rancho, they do not have a lot of property. It was a small land grant. And the fellow that she wants to marry is the son of one of the richest ranchos around.
Okay, the girl has
Rancheros.
ambitions. Okay.
The girl has ambition. She's just fallen in love with this guy and he loves her. But the marriages have to be arranged and approved of by the parents. And there's no way that she qualifies.
Mm,
Plus the fact that there has been a prediction made about her
mm-hmm.
that she will be carried away by a spirit man. So, I mean, that is really damaging to your reputation. So she's kind of looked down upon because of that she will, run away with a spirit man or something, or he will carry her away. And so she's having a hard time dealing with that. Well, on top of everything else, the group called the Bear Flaggers, Fremont and his buddies, so to speak. And John Fremont actually ran for president at one time, and thank goodness he lost. because he was not the best of guys.
Ooh.
He was the Trump of his day, I think.
Ah! Oh, there was a Trump before Trump.
Yeah. Except I don't think he lied as much. No,
My goodness.
away from politics.
Yes, no, but you know what? It's a part of our lives. We can't run away from it and pretend that it's not. But even back then, politics played an important role in society. How do you strike the balance between politics and the fantasy land when you're writing?
Well, if I'm writing set as a historical fantasy mixed with magical realism, then a lot of it is as I can figure out what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard to get information. The winners of the wars are the ones who write the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And even all the words that were copied down by Bancroft about what the rancheros said to him and told him, he never published it. He just put it away in an archive.
Mm-hmm. He
And
wasn't
there
that interested in what they had to say.
Well, he wanted to, get it down, and it
Mm-hmm.
was never even translated until many years later, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now it's just in the Bancroft Library in Berkeley.
Yeah.
So I did not go there because at the time the Bancroft Library was closed. And they were doing some remodeling, something else. I'm not sure what it was, but I couldn't get in there. So I had to figure out everything I needed by reading as many books as I could. Because when I started the research on this, there literally was just a very beginning internet.
Mm-hmm.
Google was just coming into play. And I didn't even know what Google was.
How times has changed, because I
Yes.
know you're Googling all day, every day now.
Oh, yes. I'm the Google gal.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about how your personal story shaped this story, especially the story of the character Catalina?
Well, she's got ambition to do what she thinks is right.
Mm-hmm.
She's sometimes unsure of herself. She's sometimes afraid, but she knows what she needs to do, and she goes and she tries her best to do it. And she gets in a lot of difficulties because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And she just tries to keep going. And it's kind of the way that I've dealt with life. I've just tried to keep going.
Yes.
And fortunately, in 1975, I married my second husband, and he was absolutely wonderful, the exact opposite of my first husband. And so
second time's a charm. Second time
yes,
was
we were married for 42 years before he passed.
Mm-hmm.
He was older than me. And I went and married a widower with 3 sons, 2 teens, 1 preteen. And I went to live with Peter Pan and the 3 boys.
Mm. Nice. Very nice. So tell me a little bit more about your life with the 3 boys, growing, helping to raise 3 boys.
Well, they were pretty well raised by their first mom, and she was a good mother, but she ended up with a very nasty brain tumor. And it was a slow growing one, but when it hit, it really hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just went in, and I knew that 3 teenage boys would like to eat. Because my husband was 6'3".
Uh-huh.
One of the boys was probably close to 6 feet at the time, and another one was a little less, and the younger one hadn't started, getting tall yet.
Uh-huh.
And they were not fat, but they were muscular.
Uh-huh.
And they could eat anybody at a house and home. I mean, I used to have to hide the chocolate chips in a plastic sack in the bottom of my clothes hamper. I hid things in the freezer by putting them in containers that said frozen squash. You know, I saved the boxes and then I'd stuff the stuff. So you'd look in the freezer and it would say, oh, frozen squash. So they didn't bother
Those
those.
boys can eat, okay?
Yeah. And so
Uh-huh.
I love to cook. So I
Mhm.
was working full time. I'd come home and cook at night. I'd cook on weekends.
Mhm.
And they just ate everything. And I was in heaven.
Yes, yes. Because you loved cooking and they loved eating. What a perfect marriage.
You know, and my husband had certainly had a big appetite. He was about 220, 230 pounds at the time and 6'3". And
Yeah.
I mean, shoe size 13 and a half to 14.
Oh my
So
word.
that will give you an idea
Yes.
then, you know, what we were dealing with here.
Yes, yes. Very tall men, huge men, um, that really appreciated your cooking. Did Catalina cook? Did you write anything about her and her
Yes,
cooking?
yes.
Okay.
She's because of the lack of they don't have a lot of servants because um you know they're less affluent. Servants take actually money to feed, you know, or you know, and they're good to their servants. You know,
Yeah.
they're not that far removed from them. And actually, Catalina's closest friend, because her siblings are all brothers,
Mm-hmm.
is one of the servant girls. And so she goes and she works in the kitchen with her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have them, you know, making the chili and the beans and these other things. And so I do have some scenes of her cooking and serving.
You've mentioned that your upbringing and personal struggles, including growing up with the Mexican heritage in California, influenced your writing. Can you share or talk more about how your personal history shaped the stories that you tell?
Well, first of all, I had grandparents on both sides. On my mother's side, her mother, my my grandmother and my grandfather on my mother's side lived with us. They were
Mm.
not Mexican; they were British, Swedish,
Uh-huh.
and so she never got past the 8th grade in school because her father died when she was 12, and she was put out to work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what was done in those
Those
days.
days, yeah.
Yeah.
My,
So
how
that
far
was,
we've come.
yeah. Well, there's still plenty of places in this world where that's
Yes.
the operative.
Yes. It's still standard. Yeah. It's still a thing, even much younger. Mm-hmm.
And so she was a religious person. She was a Methodist, and no matter how poor she was in her life, she believed in tithing. So I grew up with a very, very strong obligation of the right thing to do
Yes.
and and her religion,
Mm-hmm.
and that carried me a long way through. I'm back to Methodism now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A girl can do whatever she wants to do. It's her,
Yeah,
it's we can make our own decisions and we can change our minds. That's one of the strength that we have.
yeah,
So yes,
and
you change your mind.
yeah, and then on my father's side, uh,
Mm-hmm.
his let's see, his grandmother and his great grandmother. Do I have this right? I'm always getting the greats and the great greats mixed up. But
Mm-hmm.
this would be my my great grandmother and my great great grandmother. Yeah, okay. My great grandmother and my great great grandmother. No,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I think I've got that right now. And she was incredible. They came up from Mexico in the 1850s, and it was shortly after the United States had made California a state.
Mm-hmm.
And so she she was instrumental in helping Mexico respond to the French that came and invaded
Mm-hmm.
Mexico and tried to they were actually in the government, and they wanted to get the French out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And so she, when she was a teen, and this was Hipólita Orlandine de Medina, went around trying to recruit expatriates in California to go back and help throw the French out. And this was what she did when she was 16 years old. Schooling was at home.
Mm-hmm.
And her mother had inherited a small fortune when she became a widow,
Mm-hmm.
because they had silver mines down in Mexico. But she didn't want to stay down there without her husband. She decided to either go back to Spain with her family there with the Orlandines, or come up to California. And she decided to come to California with her two daughters, her two young daughters. And she donated part of her funds that she lived on
Mm-hmm.
to help throw out the French. She equipped, because those days, if you went to war,
Mm-hmm.
you had to provide your own uniform, your own weapon, the things like that. The government just didn't provide you with all that stuff. So she had to equip a group of men to go down there and to fight. And this is part of the holiday that is not really celebrated much in Mexico. And they really celebrate the independence from Spain, but the
Mm-hmm.
independence from the French, which is celebrated with Cinco de Mayo,
Mm-hmm.
the one that she was involved in.
Okay, this is very deep. This goes back a long time ago. So we have to do our research.
Yes, and
Mhm.
fortunately, Hippolyta's history letters to her are in the California Historical Society in San
Mhm.
Francisco, and I found them, and I had them translated from Spanish into English by two graduate students at UC Berkeley. And
Mm.
so they did a pretty good job. They didn't get everything, but they did a pretty good job. And so I have all these wonderful letters about men praising Hippolyta before she got married to Emigdio Medina. You know, and
No.
I'm saying, boy, she broke a lot of hearts when she.
You know, I'm wondering if the spirits, because in your book, The Plague of Flies, Catalina is guided by spirits, and now I'm wondering if your great great grandmother and your grandparents were part of the spirit world that helped to guide Catalina um, to the homeland.
Yeah, and that's possible. You
Ah.
know, I'm a scientist, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But I believe in religion, as some notable scientists do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not notable, was never a notable scientist. I was just, but, and I've had experience since my husband died
Mm-hmm.
with things that just don't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Like what?
I think of him. Well, first of all, before he passed away, I had him record his voice telling me that he loved me, so that
How
after he
romantic.
was gone, I could listen to that every night, which I did. And then, I shut my laptop, and when the laptop shut, you don't hear it, right?
Right.
And 6 hours later, and it was always 6 hours later, I would wake up and hear my laptop, which I
Mhm.
kept near me, and it was playing his voice.
The I love you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And it happened more than once?
Oh, yeah. It happened a lot of times.
What did you think when it was happening? What did you
I mean,
believe
I
was
thought,
happening?
what's wrong with my laptop? And it ended up by happening with 2 laptops.
Uh-huh.
And then it stopped after about a year or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then he used to always turn on the overhead light to project the time on the ceiling over our bed. I didn't even know how to turn on the light.
Mm-hmm.
It was something in there, and you had to. It was on his side. He turned it on, and I never turned it on after that. And so by this time, I was sleeping over in his medical chair because I was having trouble with my back.
Yes.
So that and with acid reflux, and with a condition that could, because of the amount of esophageal reflux, if they didn't do something about it, it could lead to cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is what one of the cancers he ended up with. So, anyway, I woke up, and the light across the other side of the room that he always used to turn on was on.
Yes. Didn't you get spooked out?
No, no,
Wow. You
because
know,
that was David, and it happened a couple of times, and
mm,
now nothing has happened for the past several years, and I figure, well, either he's gone on to some place where we no longer have any connection, or
mm-hmm.
it's he figures I'm all right.
Wow. Wow.
So I still listen to his voice every night,
Mm-hmm.
and I dream about him,
Mm-hmm.
and I love him.
Ah,
And it's always,
beautiful.
you know,
This is the kind of love that you write about, um, where you meet someone and they are your soulmate, so much so that you have to hear their voice every night before going to bed, even in their passing. That is a beautiful story. Whew. Now, in your other book, Steampunk and Alternate
steampunk, Punk, steam.
Steampunk. Steampunk, guys, and alternate history are central themes in your work,
Yeah,
especially in this next book, The Engine Woman's Light. Oh, I
yeah,
love that name so much.
yeah,
What
and it
appeals to
went
you
through a
about
number of different
these
words.
Huh?
It went through a number of different names before it got published.
Right. Okay. So you have to keep going and write 110 before you find the right one that, you know, uh, rings to your heart.
And with that one, that's the one that I had to learn how to run a steam locomotive.
How is
I
that?
had to learn how to sit in the engineer's seat and make it go down the track and make it stop and do the signals and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn really how a steam locomotive worked.
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember most of the stuff that I learned because I started on this in the 1990s. It took me 20 years to actually get to the point where I knew enough that I would sound credible
Mm-hmm.
writing a story about a steam locomotive engineer.
Boy, the research it just sounds like fun for this writing career.
Yes. Oh, lots of fun.
Uh-huh. That's
and
beautiful.
and David and I went to all kinds of places in California. We went out of state to find trains. And we went to Colorado, we went to New Mexico, we went back to Pennsylvania, and of course the ones in California. And the greatest compliment that I think I got on all of this was when the repair fella for the skunk train in California, which is they have a couple of diesels, and then they have one steam locomotive. And the repair fellow for the steam locomotive said that he had never met a woman that knew as much about steam engines as I did.
Because you were in it. You put your head and your heart in it.
Yes. And I did that for 20 years.
Yeah. And because you did all of that, you put your head and your heart in it. That really helped you to create some vivid, authentic scenes in that book. Yeah.
Yes.
So the readers could feel like they are seeing and living into this experience.
Yeah. And I also tried very hard not to get carried away and do information dumps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I tried really hard to get that through with dialogue, or if I'm inside the character's head, what he's doing or she's doing, because it starts out that Juanita ends up possessed by a great uncle of hers who was a steam locomotive engineer who passed away. And so because she's got to go and stop the steam locomotive that is carrying the elderly and orphans to this very disreputable care center in California, and just eliminating people as they get too crowded. So it's, yeah. And so, and if you really look back into the history of any kind of public place for people who were poor to go in California, it was pretty miserable.
Tell us a little bit about Juanita. Tell us about that character, Juanita.
Well, she was given up at birth by her parents, and she didn't know who they were. Mm-hmm. She just, was put on the train to go to the care center, and they could get rid of her, And so she ended up on the train, but a woman was asked to take care of her on the train, so she wouldn't just scream and yell for the trip from the Contra Costa County area all the way down.
She was a baby?
She was an infant, about 2 months. I'm trying to think. It was a month old, 2 months old. I can't remember exactly when, but she was still pretty small.
Uh-huh.
And so the woman she was given to realizes when she goes to change her diaper that this child is wearing something she made for one of her children or grandchildren, that they had. This was a family heirloom, and this kid was wearing it.
And the baby was wearing that.
The baby was wearing it.
Okay.
And at first she said, how could the kids give it away? How could they give it away? How could they give it away? Is, the thing that I treasured so much, and it meant nothing to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the spirit of her late husband appears, and nobody around can hear him, but she can hear him and she can see him. Mm-hmm. And he says, your son didn't really just give it away.
She knew
her
something.
grandson. Yes,
She
yes.
realized at that moment
She
that,
realized, oh
yeah,
my God, this is
family.
my great grandchild, this
Ah.
baby. And she says it, and she's like 80 years old, and she's got
Mhm.
leprosy, which was a disease in California then.
Mhm.
And so she's being sent away as a leper.
Mhm.
And she's like, how, what am I going to do? And she's got to get that baby off the train.
Yes. So the lady is traveling because she's been sent away, and the
Yeah.
baby is traveling because she's been sent away.
Yes.
Wow. Your novels are very depicting of women as heroes or the heroines. How come your protagonists are always depicted in such a way?
Well, I've done male protagonists, and my
Uh-huh.
first novel published, my protagonist was a Kren,
Mm-hmm.
which was an inhabitant of another planet somewhere, and he was 8 feet tall, and he had lizard-like skin and a
Mm-hmm.
human-like face, only with lizard-like skin,
Mm-hmm.
and he had 4 arms, and he became associated with a human who was only about 5 feet tall because the human race had not thrived on this planet.
Mm.
It was rough. They were the minority race, so to speak, and so he was only maybe little over 5 feet tall. And
Mm-hmm.
so he paired up with this dude who's 8 feet tall with and who is capable of being a warrior. And he's a traitor, but he knows how to fight because
Mm-hmm.
you have to in those days. You know,
Yeah.
this is early history. So I had a male character, but I also had a female character that was just kind of not seen. She was talked about until close to the end of the book, and then she appeared. And so actually, I wouldn't call her a ghost character,
Mm-hmm.
but she was talked about all the time. And then she appears at the end in a critical scene where she stops the war between the two tribes. That would have been devastating.
Yeah.
And she had a disability. She was an albino.
Mm-hmm.
And in the desert, an albino, that was bad because you had no protection from the sun, so to speak. So she
Mm-hmm.
was not considered capable of having children or being a primary wife. She could only be like a secondary wife to help out the primary wife.
Oh wow. Okay. What can readers expect from your next project?
Well, that one is it's steampunk,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts out in Mexico, but the main character escapes with her mother and her sister to the United States because
Mm-hmm.
somebody is trying to kill them. They've just
Mm.
wiped out most of their family. There's a big explosion in the first, couple of chapters,
Mm-hmm.
and they're next. They were supposed to be somewhere in an airship, and it exploded. But they didn't board.
Mm-hmm. So this is to come.
This is to come. This is to
Oh.
come. And I'm only like 3 or 4 chapters into it. And as soon as I get done editing this book that I'm editing for a woman, that I should be done in the first quarter of 2025. As
Mm-hmm.
soon as I'm done with that, it's back to the new novel.
All
because I have
right.
all kinds of ideas now that weren't there at first. So,
How can readers get in touch with you and start to learn more about all of the great stuff that you've done and all of the greatness that you have to come?
well, I have a lot of it on my website, but I want to tell you that I don't keep up my website the way I did when I first started to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got some holes here and a book missing here, but it's only, it's only a book that I have a short story in,
Uh-huh. But if they want to find you, go to your
So,
website. What's your website?
yeah, laurelannehill.com, LaurelAnnehill.com.
Pretty simple, guys. Please follow up. Now, before you leave, I have 3 questions that I love to ask all of my guests. What's
Okay.
one bold promise that you can share with this audience?
Okay, and I already told you about this. In 1990, I made a promise to my hallucination of the Grim Reaper.
Uh-huh.
He appeared to me when I had an unknown malady, muscle cramps in my back 24/7 for 6 weeks. I feared I'd never be able to get out of bed again. I was on meds to help ease the excruciating pain. The
Mm.
Grim Reaper held a pen instead of a scythe. I promised to start writing fiction again and try my best to get published if I recovered. I had not written a short story for 30 years. I had not had one published since I was 11 when I'd submitted a horrid piece to the children's section of a major San Francisco newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
In 1990, I had forgotten most everything I'd learned about writing short fiction, and I had no idea how to write a novel. Plus, I had a full-time job in a pharmaceutical research and development site as an environmental health and safety specialist. I struggled, but succeeded. I've now written over 30 published short stories and 3 award-winning novels. And The Engine Woman's Light has won 13 awards. And plus it got the Kirkus Star. And The Plague of Flies has won 17 awards.
Woo! Impressive. You are impressive.
So I was not afraid to enter contests because
It sounds like it.
that's how I got to college.
Now, what's a bold statement that you can share with this audience that will help them cause a paradigm shift?
Okay. My older sister gave me a fake rock a few years ago. It was a paperweight, and on it were the words, "Just love everyone. I'll sort them out later," and it's signed God.
Oh.
Now, unfortunately, that bold statement is unlikely to cause a paradigm shift anytime soon, even if I got out my old bullhorn and got up on the rooftops and shouted it.
Mm-hmm.
But in this war-torn world, I only wish it could.
Thank you for sharing that. I pray, and I will pray with you, that peace will reign on this earth. The Bible says, when 2 or more agree, there he is also. And I've learned recently also that when one person believe, you can reap 1,000. But when 2 people agree, God will bless it to 10,000. So because you and I are agreeing, and there's so many people in this world that are hoping and praying for peace, I know one day we may not live to see it, but peace will reign on this earth. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I have a third question. What's a bold move you'd like to make in the future?
Okay, now this one I'm 81 years old. My older sister, who passed in January, acquired dementia when she was only a year older than me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many years remain for me to make any bold move, except maybe to finally get my financial affairs in order. So, and make a meaningful donation in my will to my church.
Mm-hmm.
I've only got 4 chapters written for my next novel. And I think the boldest thing that I can do is have the audacity to think that at the rate that I write stories, which is slow as a snail, that I can actually accomplish it and see it published before I fade.
Oh.
So that's my bold move
for the future. I am so happy to have this conversation with you. I can't wait for people to get more of you by reading one of your 30 novels. And it's been a pleasure.
Three novels.
3 novels, pardon me.
3 novels.
3 novels and over 30 stories.
Stories. Yeah, I stopped
stories.
counting on the short stories. I got to 30 and I said I can't keep track of them. So I didn't.
Did you compile the 30 stories into one?
No.
That would be a good project.
Yeah.
That will be an amazing project.
Yes, I have to, because these go back to the mid 1990s.
Uh-huh.
And they're not even on electronic form. So I'd have to.
It's going to take you some time. You'd have to type them out or hire a kid from college to type them out for you. You know what? So you don't have to type them out anymore. There's this app called Otter, Otter.
Mm-hmm.
And if you download Otter on your computer or on your phone, you can read it into Otter and it transcribes them for you.
Okay, I hope that the reading software has gotten better than what it used to do. I remember when they first came out, it couldn't understand me.
No, they're much better now.
Okay.
They're so good. The only thing that I find with them is they duplicate a lot of words or interpret them a little off, but that is nothing compared to the work that they do. They get about 90% right, and you just have to read through it and make the corrections. So there we have it. Compilation of short stories coming from Laurel Anne Hill.
Someday over the rainbow, way up high.
Oh, Laurel, thank you so much for being a guest on the Bold Book of the Day, for bringing your wisdom and your beautiful, kind heart to my audience. I appreciate you so much, and I can't wait for you to come back with your next project. Do you want to say anything to the audience before you say goodbye?
Just keep hoping for peace.
Yes.
Just keep hoping for sanity.
Yes.
Just keep hoping that this world can solve its own problems.
Yes. And let's go out there and do our part in, not just hope, but do our part to help get peace to this earth. That we all have a responsibility. And if you are not doing anything, you are part of the problem. If you're not part of the solution, you're a part of the problem. So you heard it here from me and my friend, Laurel Anne Hill. Now, if you would like to write your story and get your book idea out of your head and onto paper, please send me an email to authordnicholson@gmail.com. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson, or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.